is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Shanarasamharambe Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha Baba Ganjo Sanji Kai Tembe Doji Shil Gadaji Badaji Shewadaji Jagi Baji Metambe Judanji Shelingo Yezoha Ngere Andonya Jejo Shewada Medo Nube Yenan Jewada Domba Junji Mondo Zonyoji Naji Le Jane Na Le Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Radha Mandala Gami Radayami. Jodan Jodi Jonam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonani Andro Lamen Jia Jubario. Jodan Jodi Jonam La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonam Yendro Lamen Jia Jubario. Jodan Jodi Jodan La Janjo Badu Dani Jasuchi Dagi Chunye Jibe Zonam Yendro Lamen Jia Jubario. There's room over there also. Just make yourselves comfortable. Welcome to the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center. Very good. Jishin Mundru. Sarva Mamu Yuri. Mundru.
Want another cushion? I don't use them.
Cheers is a chair.
Sit you again. You're welcome to sit in a chair also.
Sit in the chair. Cushion? No? Okay. No. Thank you.
당가서 다 사간 나와지 말고 사간 나와. 근데 이거 봐줘. 상집이 주신 안에 베비 제바치네 중이 봐도 사간 나와서 그래서 말이야.
So right now we're celebrating the month of Buddha. And we find that this runs from the 1st through the 15th on the Tibetan calendar. And we celebrate Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana.
어제 다 사간 나올 다 사간 먼저 돌아 그랬어. 사간 먼저 돌아서 나 들른 가서 거한 하지 주나야. 거한 본지. 루빈 페요사레스 사간 먼저 돌았어.
So this is also called the month of increase of 100,000. And what that means is that every virtuous deed that we engage in is multiplied by 100,000 times.
어제 사과 먼저 둬서 다
So right now we're going through the text called The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment by Lama Tsong-kha-pa.
Dendru lanse de chiba is marwa dendru lai me den tu ji glan chibu chungu lan jing glan ane donge ju da bu tabo tu ji glan de la jing glan chibi lan tene wo de shanju ji sen la so ba tu wo chibi sanji gu mu tu ji glan de la chibi lanse marwa.
The Tama, the Shanchu Jesem, the Garilabs, the Jibu Chembilang.
Chembilang, Saint Josena, and the Shanchu Saint Losot.
Okay. So, what is the meaning of this text called The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment? This text explains the pathways for beings of small, medium, and great capacity. So we find in Atisha's text, which is considered the root text for this, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, in the beginning, a quote that's a stanza that states, "Understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics, or I shall clearly define these three." So what does this mean? Here it was referring to first the small, referring to those small pathways. And those small pathways, or those pathways for beings of small capacity, are the pathways that lead to the higher realms of cyclic existence. And then those medium pathways are those pathways, or those medium scope pathways, are those pathways that lead to the abandonment of suffering, or nirvana, or liberation. And those great capacity pathways, or great scope pathways, are those pathways that encompass those and with the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So this is what is meant by those three capacities, three specific pathways leading to three specific goals.
And then the and then Nalenta cable Naga Journalism, the Sugati Jabag, put in Yajatan, what is.
And for those of you who are new to the Chenrezig Center, these texts are two different categories. These are books that are behind us here. And here we have the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. And these are texts that have been translated from Pali and Sanskrit into Tibetan. So we have 100 texts that are the pronouncements of Lord Buddha in Tibetan. And then we have the authentic Indian commentaries. And the authentic Indian commentaries have also been translated into Tibetan. And there we have 213 texts. And these are leaflet texts.
So
all of the traditions within Tibet, whether it's Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, Galup, or the Bon tradition, they all rely upon and have as a source of their information these texts here, the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. And below those texts, we also have the collected works of Lama Tsong-kha-pa, as well as the collected works of Kirtub-je and Gyaltsab-je, Lama Tsong-kha-pa's spiritual sons.
Zamali Chukan Jasun Duba Naji, the Kanju Tenju Dana Chu Junkalo, what the London on Duduaris, Chivichumundi, Chemusungi, Dana on Duduaris, Johnson Dungi Chun Duja, Penelevasha, Jason is.
So This work, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, that presented these three capacities, the small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity, sometimes called scope as well, is considered an ocean of instruction. And the reason for this is that the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment is compared to all of the waters. They compare the lamp to the lamp for the path to enlightenment to the great ocean. Just like all the waters in the world eventually end up in the ocean, all of the streams of texts of the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, all end up into Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment and are presented according to three capacities: small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. So we find in Lama Tsong-kha-pa's abbreviated stages on the path where it compares this to the ocean. It says, as these stages can fulfill every desirable aim of all nine kinds of beings, they are a power-granting king of precious instruction. Because they collect the streams of thousands of excellent classics, they are indeed an ocean of illustrious, correct explanation.
집에 좋은 것도 들다 집 사지들라 삼바장 것도 삼바도 집에 들러로도 세와 사지송 삼바장 것들라 지된 심한더니 줄로 집어다 지된 심한디 더 되면이 지된 심한디 더 되면달라 전도도 렌데니 전도 사지는 렌데 그도레스 렌데를 시상바다 시다 삼바 산내 조도 샤주 사지송 난 소바레드 말바.
So the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment gave a presentation in abbreviated form of the three capacities: small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. And we could put parentheses the teachings for beings of small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacity. So right now, we're looking at Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment that gives a very expanded explanation of those capacities. And we're currently in the section called Training the Mind in the Stages of the Path Shared in Common with Beings of Small Capacity. So that section has three subheadings. First, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, and then the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity, and then dispelling any misconceptions that are related to a person of small capacity. So under the first category, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, we find two headings underneath that. First, developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and next, relying on a method or a means for achieving happiness in one's next life. So we're dealing with that last category of relying on a method or a means for achieving happiness in one's next life. And under that category, we find two categories. First, refuge, and then karma and its results. So we're currently in the karma and its results section of the text. And there we have an outline with three major headings. First, karma and its effects explained in detail. Karma and its, a general presentation of karma and its effects, or karma and its effects in general. And then second, karma and its effects in detail, or the particulars of karma and its effects. And then finally, we have the category of how one engages in virtue and engages in virtue and abandons non-virtue after having reflected on karma and its effects in general and in detail, or particularly. So we're in that last section of how one engages in virtue and abandons non-virtue after having reflected on karma and its effects in general and specifically. Dixon. So what is the pathway for beings of small capacity? These are the practices that lead to the higher realms of cyclic existence, which are the practices that are the pathways to the higher realms of the gods and humans. So those practices are as follows: going for refuge to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engaging in ethical behavior that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and then if one engages in a negativity, acknowledging that downfall, acknowledging that negativity by way of confession.
다 유슈바즈고 지지던 가를 저선도네 와데
So we find the Christian tradition, we have in the Christian tradition very similar practices. One goes for refuge to Jesus, goes for refuge to God, abandons 10 negative actions, and so forth. So we find a very big similarity here. So then Hindus and Muslims also share a very similar idea. In Hinduism we find that going for refuge to Shiva and then abandoning the 10 non-virtues is also present within the Hindu tradition. And then the Muslim tradition, there are similar ideas.
Cheba doji jambi su wata kato laring chimbu beyi jena jatang jashu changaro guchu kongaro jatang guchu kongaro inchi kusu angateng.
We're on page 251 in the English, the bottom where it says in particular the way of purification through the four powers.
Wata cheba doji jambi su wata nga so ane diba magawachu Deva Mako Judele, and Dongajinu Nuba Yuare, and Niola Chiag Nuba Yuare, and Yedata Tundul Chiag Nuba Yuares, what Nuba the Pachu Matuaina, and then Azulu Dongayungre, and Niola Chiata, Yedal Chiata, Tundul Chialusuri, Neka Yueta, and then the Mabazuyat and Azu, never Toji Sangune. No, what they never took never was Marba.
So it's in particular the way of purification through the four powers. So when we engage in misdeeds, such as the 10 non-virtuous activities, we are engaging in deeds that have the ability to, in the future, cause us to have to experience suffering, have to live in the lower realms of cyclic existence, such as the hell realm or the hungry ghost realm or the animal realm. So since this is a negative circumstance, since this is a problem, it's necessary then for us to apply something so that we can stop it, because it's something that's unwanted. So if we apply the four opponent powers, we're able to get rid of those things which would later lead, those negativities that would later lead to suffering.
John
Sheching Lasum. Then the Sanjay Beche Gare.
Angulumala Sanji Shizu to Mokujatan, Kujuko Sene, and Sanji Tanjine, Sanji Kuniabotoju Sumba Ingero. Then your Lanchevala Tene, Dibatane, Dajumo Tuzmo, the Dunganu Males,
Sanjay do Lesso. Lesso, Gonga Mepachi. So during the time of the Buddha, we find the story of Angumala. Angumala was told by a bad spiritual teacher to kill. He was given a wrong instruction, and he killed 999 people. And then he met with the Buddha and was given the teaching on the four opponent powers. And as a result of these practices, these purifying practices, he did not have to experience the suffering that would have normally come from that behavior. He was able to purify it and achieve the state of foe destroyer within that one lifetime. So we find this story in Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, and then we have within the Tibetan tradition the story of Milarepa, who was able to purify his negativities and achieve Buddhahood in one lifetime.
What the Tibet Khensur Tago, Khensur Tibet Tayo, Nangasu Tibet Tam Mess, lot to Mare, Nasu never told you, Nangasu Tibet Tayo.
So now we know who has been able to purify their misdeeds. So now that we know someone has been able to do so, we can't say that we have done so much wrong that we can't, or that we can't purify our own negativities.
Tangasu Turu Tabakoyando, Jun Tayano. Tenaji, Luigi Deva, Nagi Deva, Iji Deva to Saint Kudu, Saint Kudu, but they were there to look at Javan Ramones. Never told you some Shana Jibaina, Saint Luigi Deva, the Nagi Deva to Tanugu.
So our mind is similar to a cloth. A cloth can become stained. So our body, our mind has become stained by the non-virtuous actions of our body, speech, and mind. So like a cloth that can be cleaned of its stain by washing it over and over again, our mind can be cleaned or purified as well by applying the four opponent powers that is compared to the washing of the cloth and removing the stain. The four opponent powers are able to purify our mind of those negativities.
So we'll
get to the various antidotes later on in the text.
Chemanyaba Majabas, then Luigi Debat and Agi Debat and Iji Debat to Chimasa, somebody and Associate Jegre, Nyamumo Atan, Pameba Tuanju, Kutamasheba Tuanju, do you go mobile or stay Waki, and then Rameba, Luigi Deba Sayon, Sanuare, Nagi Deba Sayon Ware, and then Iji Deba, what the what the Deba Mosaguares, what the Deba Sajabatuso, Takashaju Mares, Takashaba in a Deba de Dungajinu Nubatan, Nesuntia Nubata Mabachamares, Jen don't tell du, and the Dungayungre, Nesun Jigre, what the Sodajina, never told you some good what they Luigi Deba Nag Deba to the Lote, Dungajinu Nubatan, Nesun Jig Nubate, what the Jean Waters.
So it says in the text, though you make great effort not to be defiled by wrongdoings, faults may arise due to such things as carelessness and preponderance of afflictions. So here, and then it says, if this happens, it is inappropriate to disregard them without caring, so you must try to apply the remedy about which the compassionate teacher spoke. So here, even though at times we really don't want to engage in non-virtuous activities, we are have a lack of independence at times because our afflictions become strong and we become careless and so forth. So we shouldn't feel that there is no hope because we are, even though we don't want to, accumulating non-virtue through our body, speech, and mind. We shouldn't feel that there's nothing that we can do, because even though we've accumulated these faults that do have the abilities, when the causes and condition are there to give rise to suffering of the lower realms, of the hell, hungry ghost, and animals, there is a way to purify these negativities, and that is through the four opponent powers. So we need to be careful because these things, these things such as carelessness and lack of mindfulness and so forth can arise and make us accumulate non-virtues.
What the Luigi Deva Naga Deva to Sasava, you know what they, Taza Majabaji, Tumba Tuji Jenke, 네 디바도 바장하게 타운 하수 보송 요하르 손바들 배우레스 네 사지가 디바 다게 타 네부터 질라서 봐도 어떤 무슨 요하르 도스 셰바제 근데 냐나 저기나 네 디바 다 도레스 어디 안굴 말하다 말하려봐도 잡고 가서야 다 요하르스 손에 인사래.
So then here it says that, like in the case of Angumala, we are able to also purify our misdeeds. And here it talks of the remedy. If this happens, it is inappropriate to disregard them without caring. So you must try to apply the remedy about which the compassionate teacher spoke. Here, compassionate teacher is referring to Buddha Shakyamuni, and the remedy is referring to the four opponent powers that Buddha Shakyamuni spoke of.
다들은 동안 시주비주다 대바 시주비 용도와 동안 시주비주스나 안에 잡았다 안다 그냥다 어디서 그 동아요 들어와 동바단게 네 어디 녀바들 동안을 동안 동바단게 녀바들 동안 어디 동안서나 어디 녀바들 샤도 맞이나 어디 녀송 동그레스 동안 시주비주스 다 잡아다 안주 저기 다 가데 동안 시주비 주대 잡아다 안주 네 나와 시실 나와질 샤부 중앙 장을 수중으로 주거다 어디 동안 그지 시주고 동안 시주비 주대 수중샤고 나와 시실 최중앙라고 잡아다 안주게 어디 수중 주고 그래서 다와 시시 세중알하고스 다와질에 양문 세바 중알 지제 네 라스 지 어디 소중이니 쪽으로 어때 잡았다 한 쪽에 어때 동안 시주비주 수중촌에 어때 동안도 내가 더 답하시고래 드나지 샤주 샘비도 와요나야 도바던 계속나 샤주 샘발 수중초아요래 하도던 게 네 동안 중요해 봐이나야 하게 수중초아요로 어떤 제송 대사래 동안 시주비 수내자 동바 동안 시주비 주내스 동바 수수내 송바 따르샤라사 동바 수수대장세 상아 수수 송비 수중샤고 손이가래.
So then the next part speaks about downfalls or infractions. So this word infraction, the word downfall is much more literal because it literally means falling down from the vow to the lower realms, falling down to the lower realms. So it says, now in regard to how to remedy any infractions or downfalls, do as it is explained in the context of the three vows. Rinpoche again said the reason that this is called a downfall is because you fall to the lower realms of cyclic existence. And this is related to the three types of vows. So there is a difference between a downfall and a misdeed. So a downfall is related to these vows. If one breaks one of the vows, it is a downfall. And in the context of the individual liberation vows, for instance, monks and nuns do a practice called sojong on the 15th day of the month, every month, and then also on the last day. And this is a ceremony to restore any vows that one has created a downfall around. And then with the bodhisattva vows, they also, there is a practice of sojong for purification if there's been a downfall. And the tantric vows also have a process of sojong in order to restore one's tantric vows. So here it says in the context of the three vows, this is speaking of the individual liberation vows, the bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows.
동바 매바 이나야 되는 어디바 요로다 디바 류주군에 디바 먹어줘 어디서 시주비 주대 어디 또 네바 도지군에 어디 시주고 그랬어 말베 네바 디바 시주비 시주바네 도지샤데스 디바 시주비 주대 다 디바도 동화서나 가정가서 머지자도 말베 디바도 동화 디바서나 침비지나야 디바 인게 라중 제나 디바 인게 워들 디발다 디바 먹어 디바 먹어서 말아 동화서나 동바 여행술로 마도
Lesser.
어디요 말보다 동바 여행술 동화요 말했어
Lesser.
what 디바도 동화를 맞이 말아 디바 동화를 맞이지 디바도 동화니까 임바 안에 잡아게 넘버를 세바이나 디바레 동화니가로 슈금버 세바데 디바레데 동화 말어 슈울 동바요 말어 네 동화이나 디바이 맞아 네 잡아기지 신주면 신주 주고 말에 신주바이나 네 동화 용거래 디바이 말에
Lesser.
what
이게 true. 아마 저런 the Chang, 마톤, the 통화인 마.
chanto 서자는 이거 이제
얘네 the Uma Rinchen Chenwa the Gewa Judru. The Nama Chang 마톤.
모두 주주로 처음부터 자도
이게 Tsampa.
처음부터 소화전서로 처음부터 소화전 다 있는 체면도 신지가 잔디도
Okay. 이게 the Dunda did Tsampa.
고슬라고
Okay, so we have, when we look at the two words, misdeed and downfall, these are two different words. If it is a non-virtue that is common to a householder and a monastic, then it is considered a misdeed. But for there to be a downfall, there has to be a vow present that is broken. So if someone doesn't have a vow, they can't create a downfall. So we previously went over this and compared these two and found that we have four permutations or four possibilities when we look at these two words, downfall and misdeed. So first, if we look at something which is a downfall but not a misdeed, we could use the example of a monk cutting down a tree. A monk cutting down a tree is a downfall because there's a vow to not cut down a tree, but it's not a misdeed. So that's the first permutation. The second permutation, something that is a misdeed, that's not a downfall, and that would be a bird killing a worm and eating it. The bird doesn't hold a vow, so it is a misdeed because it's killing, but the bird doesn't hold a vow, so it's not a downfall. And then something which is both, or something that is a common locus between the two, downfall and misdeed, would be a monk or a nun killing a bug. Here, it is a downfall and also a misdeed. And then something the Nikamayimbi Mu Ribong got. And then a rabbit with the horns could be the fourth possibility. So here we find that there are four possibilities between these two.
다 대바 시주반 취지샤데서 내부 도시로
Okay.
취지 내비도 레스 상바 상주 상바 상바jem 취지단 되나스 상주 상바jem 상바 취지단 되나 네 대바 시신 사바 세지 너번주로사 시신 사바 세지 너번주로스 상주 상바 취지단 되나 내부 도시 참바이나 내부터 상바이나 시신 사빌라 디바 취주 시신 사바 보나 네 디바 먹어 주세고선 주름 산단에 디바 먹어 주사바이나 어데 시신 사빌레 네빌레 데비뉴와 네빌레 두고로 다 두그레스 망에빌레 다발 투동요 마레스 어디 시대는 거도.
So then it says, however, you should remedy sins through the four powers. So just as a note, this is the comparison. Up here, remedy any infractions, that's downfall. And sins here is referring to the word we're using, misdeeds. So if you were to compare them by four permutations with the words here, it would be the two infractions and sins. But we just used a different word. Then the sutra giving the four teachings. Maitreya, if bodhisattvas, the great heroes, possess these four teachings, then they will overcome any sins that they have committed and accumulated. What are the four? The power of eradication, applying remedies, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of foundation. So here, it's saying that any non-virtues can be overcome. those non-virtues that one has done and accumulated. So if it is done and accumulated, it means that it has been thought about for a very long time, and then it is necessarily a karma that you are certain to experience, or that you will definitely experience. What need is there to talk about the karma that you're uncertain to experience being able to be purified? So if even the greatest karma that's accumulated, can be purified, then of course the karma that is uncertain can also be purified as well. So we find very similar ideas in the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, where Buddha stated that even the 5 heinous crimes can be purified utilizing the practices such as the 4 opponent powers. So we find it's very similar. That point that Buddha made is very similar to the point that's being made here, where it states that then they will overcome any sins that they have committed and accumulated. So the Bodhisattva is able to utilize these 4 opponent powers and purify the greatest amount of non-virtue. And then the hearer, the solitary realizers are able to purify a medium amount of non-virtue, and then the hearers are able to purify a small amount of non-virtue. So the hearers are Shravakas, the solitary realizers are Prachika Buddhas, and the Bodhisattva is the Bodhisattva Yana. So these are the 3, and they purify great, medium, and small amounts of negativity in that order. So the first sentence shows the 4 opponent powers in an abbreviated way. So possesses these 4 teachings. And then it says, what for? And this next sentence gives the expanded explanation of them. It actually divides them. So it says they are the power of eradication, power of applying remedies, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of the foundation. These are the 4 opponent powers.
What the Sombal Jago, Natsuina, Tujiniba Shedro, the Sombal Jagadua. 10 days to the Chondo to Sanji Kumat Marba. What is it, the Redua? I'll do Chizmojana.
So do. These are the 4 opponent powers. And we start with the first, the power of eradication. And here, this means having regret for having done what you have done. So if you've engaged in a negativity, regretting having done that. So this is the first, the power of eradication. The second, the power of applying remedies, or the power of applying antidotes. We find 6 different points that are made. Points such as meditation on emptiness, or interest in emptiness, and so forth. And then the third is called the power of turning away from faults. And sometimes when we give this teaching, usually when we give this teaching, we put this third, the power of turning away from faults, or sometimes translated as the power of commitment, as second, and the remedy is third. But in this text, we find the power of commitment or power of turning away from faults in the third section, and this third, and here. This is where the practitioner states that in the future, I will not accumulate this deed again. So it's a commitment, a behavioral commitment, number 3. And then number 4, the power of the foundation, is referring to going for refuge, generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So these are the 4 opponent powers in a very summary of them, rather, a summary of these 4 opponent powers. So that's the summary, and then as we go through the text, there'll be a much more expanded explanation.
What a good game at the Lord, the Nabatoji, which came as a rubber of shade you are there, Sabatul, what the Calais is in Nangato, what the Calais in the Marba.
So those students who are older students will know much of this material, and those new students will be able to easily, slowly ascertain it.
What Tarikusa Sabo Muled, what the Tukan, there's a negashables.
Today, many new people came, and this is a very important section of the text. So everyone listen very well, carefully, please. All sentient beings want happiness and do not want suffering.
Deval Panande the Mediuna and a Chin and Nujamudo, De Saltuna and a Nugujamudua. Then I debat the Yamatoji me what the Tesuna co Dungajin in Nebat John was, Dungan Nomogojan was. Then De Mediuna Nujamudo could never the Mabos and Hora.
Since sentient beings do not want suffering, and we don't want suffering, we have to see if there is a method that will allow us to eradicate that suffering. And non-virtue gives rise to suffering, so is there a method to get rid of that? Because these negativities that we possess have the ability or the potential to later give us the experience of suffering, then we need to figure out what to do. So we can purify these negativities that have the ability to give rise to suffering by applying the 4 opponent powers. And then this makes it so they no longer have the potential or ability to give rise to that experience. Just like if you take a piece of rice, if you plant it, will be able to grow into a sprout. But if you take fire and burn that piece of rice, then it no longer has the potential or the ability to give rise to its result, which is a sprout. So if we apply the 4 opponent powers to our negativities, it's very similar to the burning of the seed. It no longer those negativities or those predispositions no longer have the potential to give rise to suffering.
What I never told you the Mandabing is a debate to Shindamje, never told you may what the Dibal to engineer never known was it.
The Deepa Sheen, okay.
Deba Shindamje, and she make she say the road. What then I never told you may, and the Dibal to engineer never the Calicale no was it.
So the 4 opponent powers could be compared to the fire. And the misdeeds compared to a tree, for instance. Misdeeds could be compared to a tree. So the 4 opponent powers are like the fire that burns the tree down of the misdeeds. And the misdeeds can give rise to suffering, So it's necessary to get rid of them. So by applying the 4 opponent powers, we can get rid of the misdeeds in the same way that fire burns away a tree, or wood.
Tila to tombane, toma mebane, magi lela joba moides. Naba senjiba kundu shubita zade, tiba sajaba dile, joba jayadres, joba moide.
Lessa.
And the joala, name jinjebo, chitu gongososa.
Lessa.
Name jinjebo. Deba mago judele, and they were doing yungre, Nami Nasul Chigre, what in Santana, and what did Dibal Gabi Yungmarwa, and Dibal Juba Yungrova, what did Giuseppe, what Juba Jeage, Tashi to what the Casamo, Diba Magi, Nami Jebo, Dabi Jebo, Jutu Jebo to Sukongures, Diba Mago, Shada Majina, Diba Magi, Debotele, and the Dogen Yungre. Dogen ngasun to mare ngasun jigre ngasun jiwa ngasun de bayo mare to santana deba mogo de jobal hego jiro
Namin depo
Namin debo ode deba mogo chude Namin debo ngasun mare
Okay, Nason. Okay, Dixon.
ngasun chenegres nyawal jigre yedal jigre tundul jigres
Lessa.
ane dogen yungres
Lessa.
what to ngalo santana and then Hasul Jang of Gabriel
Lessa.
and doing Gabriel Moro.
Lessa.
And Deva Mogot and Joba.
Lessa.
Taji what the Santan waters.
So the power of eradication. The first power is great contrition for having done non-virtuous actions since beginningless time. In order to feel this, it is necessary to meditate on the way in which you produce the 3 effects of actions, fruitional and so forth. So it's necessary for us to look at the various effects of our non-virtuous actions. So if we engage in non-virtuous actions, the fruitional results are the lower realms of cyclic existence, of the hell, hungry ghost, and animal. But then we also have causally concordant results, and then we have environmental results. So we have all of these different types of results. So if you were to analyze and meditate upon the various results of non-virtue, then this would inspire you to not want them. It would inspire you to not want to have those things that give rise to suffering, because you don't want suffering. Here it states that it's necessary to think about what your non-virtuous activities will produce, and when you recognize that it produces suffering, and suffering is unwanted, it will make you want to turn away from these non-virtuous deeds. To turn away from these misdeeds and regret those that you have committed.
What Dibal Jobal Lesmona, then La Dolan Bisse, what the Casure Suetavan Shabi, Suetavan Sombi, Shabatan, Sanji Sungun Shabas, Takante, Titi Pai Buddha prayer, and the Suetavan Shibi, Takante Sanji Gundo to Sukolo, Dumba Ina Dibatan, Marba, and then Titi Pai Buddha prayer, Dibatawa, Suetabi, Sonshabi. What do Debatan Ure, Nishira Nivuna Debatan Ure, what to Kanun Debatan Ure, what to Son Marbe?
At the time of putting this into practice, do so by way of the 2 methods, the confession of sins in the Sutra of the Golden Light, and the confession of sins by way of 35 Buddhas. So once you have this regret, then you do a practice. So any sutra that you recite will allow you to purify your misdeeds. So if you recite the Heart Sutra, this will purify misdeeds. If you recite the 35 Buddhas or the Sutra of the Golden Light, it will purify our misdeeds. So once we have regret, we should do this. So we find in the commentary on the 35 Buddhas of Confession that it gives various amounts of our misdeeds that are purified when we recite the names of the various Buddhas. And it states that when we say to the founder, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, a glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. It states that when we recite just that line, we purify 10,000 eons of negative karma.
What the Kebachi Devatas of Pimarba, and then also what the Pudan Dijabata Jumanda, Peja Shaja to Walashas, what the Lulus in the Alila.
So isn't it amazing that this purifies 10,000 eons of negativity? Just to say to founder Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, fully completed Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, is very easy, is it not?
Then was Haji Sanataya, the Mamma, so what the Sundana, what the Dabi is.
And then it's also very similar when we do the name mantras, such as Buddha Shakyamuni's, Teata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Ye Soha.
What then the Martin Chutu, what the Hamo, Chenmo, then the Judici, he down to Haka, Tibetan Buddhism.
So in the center prayer book, we have so many different mantras. And also, any mantras we find within the 4 classes of Tantra have a power to purify.
That's what the Kebachi Devata Sudabar's Angulu Marathon to Tabares, and then Devataba the Kanesh Shagrisana, and the Kanes Gogrisana, and then also Mulang Tatsen Yunguris, Mulang Saint Chatambo, Baba, Tamasung, Chasumba Dele. And Luzubul Nasa Mabaje, and the what the Yelantana, G. Kalaputa Vasaya, Hatanamanjia, what the Yelantania says Mona, and there was Saint Chibudu Dibatagoris.
Kala Lamboche.
Lamboche Shambala Subo, the Mabuyorota, what the love.
So now we know who has purified their misdeeds, Angumala and Milarepa. And then how do you know if you've purified your misdeeds? So it is stated that we can see various signs in our dreams if there's been a purification that takes place. So this is only if we are physically and mentally well, and we are looking at very specific points in the night. So we don't look at the first part of the night's sleep or the second part of the night's sleep. It's the part right before we wake up, the 3rd stage of our sleep, where we can see various signs. And if we have a dream that we're eating good food or drinking something good or mounting an elephant or seeing a llama, or if we just wake up and feel generally good when we wake up in the morning, that's a sign that a purification has taken place. So we'll take a short break.
Da never could you to the true non dominant to some of them was that on the canyon to Luya the Redua, sharing it now, 35 Buddha, Samaland, Zanjo Doro. Then Tony Gumba the neighbor and Dua, Tony Gungi, now what the neighbor should do, Tony Marvet, Tony to what they got Dotang Ha. Samal what the 20 the mena, Hal Kagaja, Hage, never number 20 to Shirore, what the Time Netula, then 20 to Shira Mena, Netu Tabatu to Ayomare, Rajak Tabatu to Ayomare, and the Shaju about the Tamak, what the 20 to Shira the Mena, what the Dev 20 Gumba,
Less so.
Neighbors, what the song inside?
Less so. So when we go to the section on page 252, the power of applying remedies, we find that there are 6 sections. The first section deals with dependence upon profound sutras. So this serves as an antidote or remedy if one recites the sutras in the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, such as the 35 Buddhas of Confession, or the Prajnaparamita Sutras, or the 7-limb prayer, any of those examples, when one is reciting them, thinking about them, reading them, retaining them, you have this remedy present, dependence upon profound sutras. The second is interest in emptiness. Emptiness is indispensable when we look at all of the traditions of Buddhism. If we look at the sutra tradition or the tantra tradition, we find the wisdom realizing emptiness to be indispensable. One finds in tantric teachings it's necessary to have the wisdom realizing emptiness. If one wishes to achieve the liberation of a hearer, of Shravaka, it's necessary to have the wisdom realizing emptiness. If one wishes to achieve the level of Prachika Buddha, liberation of Prachika Buddha, then it's necessary to have the wisdom realizing emptiness, and also the Bodhisattva vehicle as well. So we find that the wisdom realizing emptiness to be an indispensable realization for all of the pathways within Buddhism.
So the
view of emptiness in the Madhyamika Prasangika school, or the middle way consequence school, and the tantric view of emptiness are the same. So in the we find that in the Kala Chakra tradition that breaks one of the root vows to distinguish between the wisdom realizing emptiness of the perfection vehicle and that of the tantric vehicle. So if you say that there is this higher view if you discriminate and say it's a higher view, then that's incorrect, and breaks a root vow.
that Zomba Debal Temba ne Yega Jabala Subi, Zon Chaba Jena, Chuajet to Deba was, Yega Jabala Subi, Zon Chaba Chuajet to Deba. Ponzan Gishuba Les, Suka Napi, Mechebi Me, Madi Jit, Sansin Quincy Tar, Deju Mala, Chutinungi Bar, Tundu Chambe, Me Tibasis, Cheta Kala, Yemi Yoseje, Dona, Ziji Mezo, Joajin, Chutin Yeme, Ne Yose, Deju, Chutin Yeme, Deju, Dona, Dibi Kanjan Sebanjoros, Mena Mala Mamushubaye, Mena Malu Seva Shebaye, Ne Tsro Tone, Sabi Dibi Me, Ne Deju Mame, Nietu Seva She Son So, Deju Mame Seva She Son Sos, Tian Diba Shan Tsama Tonga Tessit, Matonga Tessito, Deju Shaos, Tsama Ne, Malana Sengaba Chubatan, Shedan, Oma Tonga Dan, Chubata Nyama Dan, Dawa Tonga Dan, Nakalan Roa Dan, Mambawa Dan, Mahe Dan, Manabu Toba Dan, Galon Me, Ganu Tonga Dan, Oma Jun Shin Dan, Lambu Dan, Chuchu Dan Ridan, Sengi Chila, Kanzang Tindo, Zeba Dan, Chunieba, Meba, Kuji Jizon Le Son Sos, what Deba to Debala Temba Trendo, Debala Temba. Tan Debala Temba, what Debala Temba, then Deba Tabi put Egatem Son. And Egatem Tombote, Paya the tree, Marbe, Paya the tree. Nimba the Snow Martin, Saint-Jean, Nije, Somba the Mabatan light. ane ngazu me shinsiring marbe me burn tree me burn tree example tene chujin abusun tene deju ege jabala soba wote ne lai daji da deju gune ngatin gune wote ngan deba ina wote ge dibi shinsiring Devi Shinsen, Puna, me, Shinsibajinos, Igadom Tom the Remedway. Niba de la Sono Martin, Saint in the Marbe. Sono Martin, Yamasha Sona, Oko, can't dema to show Shuno, Tanaji, and then the Carso, Debi Carle, what the Karsa Deju Kitanum can't to the down by Ina, what the Deju Yamad Shasuna, Deju Yamashasuna, Debi Kankangala, showing race, Deba Kalikal Tanures.
That's so.
Then examples Umbat Tamarba, Dar Light Marba, Light Men and no common Ahumar Venako. Light to Spabaina, and the light at the Mabat Sana. Jalak
That's so.
Then Naji what the example, then
Deepa.
Tan Deju ne Karsugure Zungatan Chela Temple, Zungatan Domaina, then the DB Mapa sound is DB Mapa, and then Deju the light in Amimere, Deju light, and then the Mapa sound is Person Tango Person. Tanga Kalelu no what the what is Katun the Lasha and the Mara.
Okay.
Debala Temba ne Jabala Suba, Jaba Su, Zon Chabajana, Chugajin Duba was Sela Temba to what there and war. Jabala Su, Zon Chabajansana, Jabat Mosman, Sudan all Judy, Edan Hat to the Gayo. The theatre on the Mammanes was under the Shaju, Nanjulana, maybe Juge, and then Hat to Kangolo, Dajid and Duji Gune, Tukal and Hatin Kune, what the Deba Ina, what the DB Shinka Sidigaris, DB Shin, but not me, DB Shin Sibajinos, what the Bajad Marba. Ponong Shubale, Suka, Machibi, Machi is. Sokasana so the Tsong Tsang Kalan Damat Marbe, and Shingan Kamachadu Road, Mambas on Shingan Sinda Road.
That's so.
Soka Michichi me Madi Jinto, Tenzin, Kunsi Tara example, Deju Mala, Tujin Long Bus, Dejus, and Judiji, not gone, Dajin Dijagun. And Dajun Duji Tugale can't to good Egabala Subi, Zon Chabajan, what the Ndobaina, Treating Long Bar, Tundujin, what the Kali Jabaina, Tundujin, what the Ndobaina, and Meji Dibasi, Diba Kalegal Danu Resmarbe, Cheta Kala, Ta Ekazamiba, the Neba, and Sono Martin down. Saint-Jean de Marbe.
That's so.
Sono Martile, Saint-Jean Yamashabaina, Koshoyudo. Then Najin, and a DB Carle, and a neighbor what the Yamatashazuna, Dibatana Resumore, Cheta Kala, Nimi, Zeje, Cheta Kala, Sono Martiro.
That's so.
Sono Martin, Kala, Nimi, Zeje Saint-Jean. Dona Ziji Mazu, Joajins, Kant Shonogres, example. Tutin Yemi Tutin Yemi des Juges, Tutin Abuson, Tene Yegabala Suzon Chabajento, des Juges Baina, Dumbaina, des Juges, Dona, Dibi Kanjan, Sebajus, Dibi Kantuka Shonogres, or the Putinji Jagandua. Tapo son banderedo, Mena, Mala Mamushubajins, Menas and Kamadna Hunova, 나군 라이트 바바이나 안나 코 메박 가서네 통용도 던다버려 손에 살 메나 말라 마마쇼 쇼와인 메나 말루 세와 셰베진사 메나 말루 는 강바 나군 루바바이나 메bat 바서네 잘라가 통도 던나지 네 서로 tunsabi dibi mes 제와 도마 매번 다 디바도 뢰지 디바 나게 디바 이지 디바 사샤비 디비 매바데 nendeju mame zon ne yegi jabala su zon chaba jento so odende ma ina mame what the dibi ma ba sewa shigres diba tanus kalegal tanus she's what is on do she's on so de ba ti la jana
Seldu. The Tony Detzlag. Okay, so I just want to add a section right now into the interest in emptiness section. Last week we went over it and I was unable to translate some of what Rinpoche talked about. So I'm just going to insert it in right here and then we're going to move on to dependence on recitation. So in order for a phenomenon to be established as conventionally existent, it has to meet three qualifications. It can't harm that which is ultimately validly established, or that which is conventionally validly established, or be harmed by conventionality, what the world appears commonly to the world. So when we look at the horns of a rabbit, for example, which is an example of a non-existent phenomenon, we find that the existence of a horn of a rabbit, conventional valid cognition harms that, as well as conventionality, what appears to the world, because this doesn't appear as an existent. Likewise, the self and that which belongs to the self, that which is I and mind, appear to have some intrinsic existence, but when we look at ultimate valid cognition, that harms the ability for it to be intrinsically existent. We have to look at phenomena when we establish them as existing or not existing to see if their existence is harmed by any of those three things: conventionality, ultimate valid cognition, or conventional valid cognition. So the self and that which belongs to the self, so the I and the aggregates, are not intrinsically existent because that intrinsic existence is harmed by ultimate valid cognition because of dependent origination. So when we look at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, and it states that a son or daughter of noble family should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. In Chandrakirti's commentary on the middle way, we find the statement that first we grasp at I and then grasp at mine. So without negating that which belongs to I, which is mine, in this case the aggregates, we can't negate the self. So this point in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we find the negation of the true establishment of self as well as phenomena, self and that which belongs to self. So it is the view of the perishing aggregates, or the view of the transitory collection, that perceives the aggregates and the I, there to be an I and mine that is truly established. So there's this view, the view of the perishing aggregates is the misapprehension that believes that there is some truly established I, but the I is not truly established and has no intrinsic existence because its intrinsic existence, the potential for it, is harmed by ultimate valid cognition, which perceives that things even conventionally lack intrinsic existence. Not only ultimately lack intrinsic existence, but also conventionally lack intrinsic existence. So now we move on to dependence on recitation. Dependence on recitation means to recite according to the rituals, the special formulas such as the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. The Tantra requested by Sabahu states, "The flames from fires that spread in spring forests are out of control, burning up all the thickets. Likewise, the winds of ethical discipline fan the fires of recitation, and the flames of great perseverance burns up sins. Just as when the sun's rays destabilize snow, it melts in the unbearable brilliance, so too do the snows of sins disappear. When destabilized by the sunbeams of recitation and ethical discipline, lighting a butter lamp in a dark gloom entirely clears away the darkness. Likewise, the darkness of sins accumulated for 1,000 lifetimes is quickly dispelled by the butter lamp of recitation. So here, if one is just reciting the name mantra itself, this is dependence on names. But when one is doing the full practice, the full recitation of the mantric recitation with the seed syllable and moon disc and the mantra garland that's circumambulating and sending off rays, if one is doing that practice, doing the front and self-generation practice while doing the mantric recitation, then it falls categorically under this dependence upon recitation. So here it says according to the rituals, the special formula, such as the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, so the special rituals and so forth, front and self-generation that go along with Vajrasattva. But we can say that any among the four classes, any of the mantras in the four classes of Tantra that are recited along with the practices of those specific deities fall into this category. So it's not just the Vajrasattva mantra. So any of the mantras of the deities and their practices in the action tantra, the performance tantra, the yogic tantra, and highest yoga tantra can be used for this. So it begins, it says, the flames from fires that spread in spring forests are out of control, burning up all of the thickets. Likewise, the winds of ethical discipline fan the fires of recitation, and the flames of great perseverance burn up sin. So here, when one is engaging in recitation with the foundation of ethical discipline, then it serves like a wind that burns up, that fuels flames that burn up our misdeeds. So like a fire can burn away a tree or burn away wood, especially it says spread in spring forest. So at times when the forest is very dry, then it's very easy for a fire to spread. So here it's saying if one has the wind of ethical discipline that kind of fans or fuels this fire, then it's able, this fire of recitation, and then it's able to burn away our misdeeds. So that's what is meant here. That by engaging in this recitation, the front and self-generation and the practices contained within that, one is able to burn away one's misdeeds. And then it says, just as when the sun's rays destabilize snow, it melts in the unbearable brilliance, so too do the snows of sins disappear when they're destabilized by the sunbeams of recitation and ethical discipline. So here this is referring to the recitation of any among the four classes of mantras, the front and self-generation practices, and then when one is doing the practices, one has the light rays that leave from the mantra garland. So here it's saying that this practice is like the sunbeams that melt the snow of our non-virtues. So snow here that's melted by the sun is being compared to our misdeeds that are melted away by this practice of recitation. And then the third category, lighting a butter lamp in a dark gloom entirely clears away the darkness. Likewise, the darkness of sins accumulated for 1,000 lifetimes is quickly dispelled by the butter lamp of recitation. So here, where the dark gloom, so when one doesn't have the light on in a room, it's very dark. So this is what is meant by dark gloom. And by lighting a lamp, it removes the darkness completely. So here, dark gloom is being compared to our the dark gloom of our misdeeds that we've accumulated since beginningless time. And we're able to remove that dark gloom of our misdeeds by engaging in recitation. So it's comparing that recitation to the butter lamp that illuminates the room that is dark. So this is the third category within this point that's made on dependence on recitation. Bene?
단 대발 템바들로 뜻부스무샤네 디바타비 추트송도와 답부송데 아네 누드 사물라 대바 누드 사물데 바이나야 아네 시 메시바나 디바타는데 칸을 냐마샤나지 아네 디바타는 그래 아네 바를레 가서 라이트 와데 메바산으로 와데 나지 뜻부송데 누드 사물라 대바 데발라 템바 돈이 공바 참말로 잡는데
The Dru Kanga.
어때 drugal kangal 크크시베지
Okay. So when we say that in this tantra requested by Sabahu that that it burns for here it's the flames from the fire that burn away our misdeeds. We can also say that the other 5 of the remedies also do that. So we can say that dependence on sutras, interest in emptiness, dependence on images, dependence on worship, dependence on names, burns away our misdeeds, burn away our misdeeds in the same way that this dependence on recitation does, and melts away the snows of our misdeeds in the same way that dependence on recitation does, and illuminates the dark gloom of our misdeeds and removes the dark gloom of our misdeeds as well. So we find that all of these remedies will do these 3 things, and we could apply them into this as in the same way that we find recitation placed there.
어떤 대바 가서 얘기 잡아서 좀 잡아잖아. 오늘 추가진도 되바 이나 어때 디바타 부송으로 네 메시티바 나지 디바치를 그랬어. 근데 돈이 구나 메시티바 나지 디바치가 말해서 라도 말보다 참을 디바 말이야.
맞아요.
어때 참을 그주도 왔다.
So for instance, in this tantra requested by Sabahu, we find this first example of the fire burning away the tree, and here the tree being our misdeeds, or fire burning away the wood, and here the wood being compared to our misdeeds, and the fire being recitation. So we don't only say that that's dependence on recitation, we say that it's the other 5 as well. Could be in all of these 3 categories.
두산 당송으로 송소 대양 디바다 디바상이 참마 특별히 참마 마통 드시도 대조셔스 디바다베다 마요바도 와데 디바샤나제 우레 송에서레 디바 어데 참마네서 참마네 냐라나 ane nyalana seng ba chubas nyalana chubatus jaba nyalana taba ina diba tabitares ta chire ndua seng ba chubata sa nyalana seng ba chubata nyalana taba ina diba tanu gojero da ane nyalana shodon oma tongwa nyalana taba ina diba tabitares tene chuba jabata nyalatana dibatabitares teni yamashavata dawatwa nyalataba ina dibatabitares nakhalan roata mambawata nakhalan roa nyalatan dibatabitare mambawa nyalatan ina dibatabitare maheda manabo thobatans maheda manabo zine ne maitoba manabu toba nyalatan sona dibatabitares maheda manabo dibage tana jimbarwata ta galon mai kanu toas ene galon mai kanu nyalan toa nyalatan sona dibatabitares omanju shintans nyalatan dibatabitare lambuchedan chuchudan lambuchedan chuchudan redan sengi chedan lambuchi tu shwenbadan ne Lampa Chetan, Chuchus, Chuchus Lampa Chejiro, Shambata, Shambanялантана, Devatavitaris, Relinziba Nялантana, Devatavitaris, Sengi Til Deva, Nялантana Devatavitaris, Kazang Tindun Zibatas, Kabak Tugale and Roa, then Nyalantan Devatavita in Zarawa, Zibatan, then the Chuneba, Nялантан Suna, Devatavitaris, Chuneba, Mibatan, and Chuneba Miba, Imba, Kuji Zones, Chuneba Minea, Devatavita, Imba de Kuji Zones on those. What the internal Devatavita and those on those, what that to the Shonzuna, Devatanu.
So do.
No, this one is
okay. Then now, what are signs that we see to know that there's been a purification that's taken place? So it says, further repeat the recitations until you see signs that you have cleared away your sins. So this is a tantric text, the formula of exhortation, Kul Je Jizung, states that the signs are dreaming the following: vomiting up bad food, consuming such foods as yogurt and milk, vomiting, seeing the sun and the moon, moving through the air or flying, blazing fires, subduing water buffalo and black persons, seeing the community of monks or nuns, seeing a tree that gives out a milky substance, riding upon an elephant or bull, climbing upon a lion throne, climbing up a mansion or a mountain, and listening to the teaching. If you have any of these signs in your dream, during the specific part of your dream, then you know that a purification has taken place, or it's a sign that you have cleared away your sins.
This one. What the Kuji is only so, Kuji is also what they marita. Ta Kuzula Temba, Ta Carrera, Kuzula Temba de Tom to the Samula Temba, Tony Meba, then Chela Temba, Ta Chela Temba, Kuzul Temba, Kuzul Temba. And the Kuzula Temba, then the Sanji Kodan, Edan to Kujima to Sula, and the Naso de Chusul Sanji Ko, and what go to what the Jima to what Tibetano do are. Shetan Tangatan. And Sanji Kutan, what to Jimaina, Devatana Grace, Kuzula Temba, ne, Sanji La, Tebanyene, Kuzushevos, Sanji Tebanyene, Sanji Ku statue making, and Tanka, statue painting, what the Zubaina, Devatana Dota.
Dang Jimba Dang, Nika. The Go Jimba Dang, Shetang Jimba Dang.
Kuzula Temba, Sanjila Tebanyene, Kuzu Shebos, Sana, Kuzu Jambaro, Lazuba,
okay.
Lajimba,
Lasso.
Lajin, and Tankanam Delejin, what the Divatano will do that.
So the next is dependence upon images, means to make images of the Buddha once you have acquired faith in him. Or her. So once you have acquired faith in the Buddha, then to construct various images, such as making statues or painting tankas and so forth. So we see here we have the statue of Buddha Shakyamuni and so forth, and all of the tankas. So the construction of these things is the dependence upon images. The construction of them. I think I said that.
Ta Kuzula Temba, what Terendo, Kuzula Temba, ne, Nujuman, Kuzula Temba, ne, Sanjila Tebanian, Kuzusheba, Sanjil Tebanian, Sanji Kuzuzuba, Kuzushimba, Kuzusheba Tele, Tibetan, and the Judiji, don't will Tebanian, they go to Zimba ina, Tibetanuro, Shetanji Atan, what to Tibetanuro.
So also in making an offering of the statues or making the actual statues in any among the four classes of Tantra or Tankas, making giving the tankas or making the tankas, all would fall categorically under this dependence upon images and be a way to purify our misdeeds. So making offerings as well as making the statues themselves and tankas themselves. Decent.
도저히 최대 나로한테 상지 구조도한테 상지 군양할때 내한테 상지 통냐가 아마지 요아서 어떻게로 어떻게 심버스 구조 동부도 말ပဲ안데 나지 와 상지를 대바니네 구조 수의진의 집에 이제 대바다노다
Yanju Surma, the Chorten, this
보드가
Lesso.
수도가 인사 보다 스태츄로 스태츄 what is the jedule 상지 통냐가 아마지 요아스 코시메이제 보다 그 상지 지네 어때 아마데가 어때 상지 구조 지와 시행도다
Ale, Sanjay Ama de Gu Zusum.
상지 아마서 오마다
Got it.
대 구조 수행 아마지요로
Zuken Ama.
아마데 시투 보다 히 상지 통요아래
Then
상지 통요아레스 근데 그 상지 통은 그 시요 말하다 어때 구조 두저에서 어때 다음부터 수의제로 다는 그 수의진의 이거 시요 말
so we have this first offering of a dependence upon image in the stupa inside Bodh Gaya, where there is a statue of Buddha Shakyamuni, and that was told to be made by the mother of the statue maker because of the importance of it and the power of it. And so this is where we find the first statues being made.
다 상지를 대반년에 상지 구조시봐 네바다 그래서 뭐로 안에 주디지 나tul 대반년에 대 구조시봐 이나 네바다 시바 이제 잡으래.
So if you give them or make Buddha, images of the Buddha, then it is a purification of misdeeds. But any images among the four classes of Tantra would also have this power.
어다지 다당뭐 너도 선물을 땜바 돈이라 매바 첸라 땜바 구조라 땜바 다더네 어때 처벌을 땜바 말배 네 제바를 가바를 처벌을 땜바를 줘봐 처벌을 땜바네 상제단티 최된라 처벌나만 하도셔봐 오스 네 상제단티 최된 상제단티 최된래 네 처벌나만 하도셔봐들 어때 시기나 안 디바타는 그래스 다 가서 어때 저도 나올다 상제 고요아래 어때 간주된 좀 뭐도 처벌면 디바타는 거다.
So the next is dependence upon worship, number 5. Means to make a variety of offerings to an image of the Buddha or to a stupa. So here you see we have many images of the Buddha and other deities, and we put out all offerings and so forth. So here we're doing this at the center right now, where we're putting offerings out in front of the various objects of enlightenment, of the Buddhas and so forth.
다 처벌 되면 모두 변해 되바다는 그래. 예초 변해 되바다는 그래. 처벌 변해 되바다 가르변나 처벌을 말해 줘봐. 처벌서나 주비께도 본다시바데 네 니에발고 봐인스. 니에발라. 네 사제의 상주 잡아서 니에바이나 처벌했어. 처벌. 니에바이나 어디 처벌에는 그래서
Nyepa, Gapa.
Gawa.
Okay. That which pleases the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So what is an offering? It is that which pleases the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so making offerings of flowers, making offerings of water bowls, any kinds of offerings would fall into this category, dependence upon worship. So what are you offering? That which pleases the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Dikson.
처벌을 때문에 사제당 네 사제당 제세 첨부 나제 사제당 제세 상주 선발인도 나제 네 Sen tu xin zuma wo ale wo chen le
Denpa.
chen le denpa ro chen le denpa zo de dan de bal denpa de chen le denpa ni chaba ja wo do wa de bal denpa ta ma de ha dong ba ji ba ro de bal denpa ine ha dong wo re chen le denpa ine ha dong wo de ni chaba ga re na wo de chaba de chen le denpa de re do wa chen le denpa sa ji da Geshe Chenmo na je chen tu shi zong wo sa sa ji de sha chu san ba da ju di ji na du chen tu shi zong de chen zong de le chen le den ba
Less so.
ye ge ja ba la so zong che ba jian na chu ga jian de ba zong de le ne ju di ji ye dang ge da ji de nu ji gong ti tu ga le ne nga jin ku ne ane han de ba de le Debala tempo. What the Daji Duji Magumbaji, Hantan Dramaina, Senla tempo, in Samarba. Tangato de Kanu Chuzu Besano Hamo Yorota, Hamo Yorote, you don't have to go on Daji Duji Gune, Dubaina, Debala tempo in the door. Daji Duji Magumbaji. And how to that on the moment, Ganja, send the
So now we get to the number six, dependence on names. So what is the difference then between dependence on names and dependence on recitation? Because in both cases there is recitation of mantras. So what is the difference? If one is doing, for instance, the mantra of Vajrasattva or any mantras among the floor classes of Tantra, and doing the front and self-generation as well as the mantra garland circumambulation around the seed syllable, then it becomes dependence upon recitation. But if one is merely reciting the name mantras themselves of any among the deities in the four classes of Tantra, and doesn't include the front and self-generation practice along with the circumambulation of the mantra garland, then it becomes dependence upon names. Less so. Less so.
Jiba Guzula Temba, Jiba Guzula Temba, Naba, Chubala Temba, then Truba de what the Chen Debaredo, what the truth in Yavudo, what the Diba Gnabu Yenaman and the truth rendo, what the Abangaba Jena, Tujunangasu, what the Yalan Jena. What the Dibal no Dibale, doing it in Niba you are, Nasun Chinu, Niba to the legal town with the Tag Toyana Mena, what is the remedy? And Deba Tansubo Sumanala, Beber Shawos, what in the Sunyabu should be told, Condus remedy.
So these six are very important because the misdeeds that we have engaged in will give rise to suffering. They will give rise to rebirth into the lower realms of cyclic existence. So when we go here, it says, so you must try to apply a remedy about which the compassionate teacher spoke. So the remedy that one applies is very important. And then we get down to here, we find there are six. So these six are very important because we don't want to experience the suffering in the lower realms of cyclic existence. And these have the power to serve as an antidote. The word antidote, this word remedy, is the same Tibetan word, just as a side note. So first we have dependence upon profound sutras, then interest in emptiness, then dependence on recitation, then dependence upon images, then dependence on worship, and then dependence on names. So it's important that we know these six and apply them. Digso. That's a karma J, you're right.
Yeah.
Karma dun.
Oh yeah, what the bitch is also. Oh yeah, that what the never going to be taught to do the Abanga wood water. What the Abanga or the debugging every element of the remedy. What the never going to be taught to the Yana Abigina, what the debug donation never Tarnagre, Nasutia, never Tarnagres, what the Toyana. Tomba Tuji Genji, Shijubi, Tautantuba, Sombala, Sombanalam, Beguzos, Tautanturim, what they have in.
So when we look to what the method for the purification of our misdeeds are, if we want to know do we have misdeeds or not, then we need to ask ourselves, have we applied these remedies? Because if we apply these remedies, then these remedies will slowly lessen our misdeeds, slowly lessen our experiences in the lower realms of cyclic existence.
Then Kashi Ramada Law would then and the Kashi Lotashi would then and not to send what the sounds of what the more true was.
It's important for us to understand it the way it is presented here, because other texts might present it in a way that's confusing, or we might misunderstand the order of things. So it's important that we understand what's presented here, because this is accurate. Then the
never told you Tombo Garza. Never told you, never told you. Never told you Tombo Gariba. Tombo Nessa. Never send you without Tombo Marbe. Never send you without Tombo G. Never good should be taught Nibaroa. Never good should be taught till Trudeau. Do the Samula Temba, Tony La Meba, Tsela Temba, and then Kuzula Temba, Chubala Temba, then what the
Senla Demba.
Tsela Temba Truder, what they can never good should be taught.
That's so.
That never good should be taught. That's somebody never had to be taught, Marbe.
That's so.
Never had to be taught. What that ring as one minute to some money. What did that ring as what did never told you no, never had. Number Sanji was going to show it out, Tombaji, Tachi, Dival Jobaji at Marva. Never going to show it total true or true. Do the Samala Temba, do the Samala Temba 35 with a pare, Shero Nebuda, what they got and do to the Cardinal and the Chemua. Do the Samala Temba. Then 2 years remember Marva. Tatoni Guadarova, Tony Guachane. And then what the Susul Karchana, the Dema Maru Gunjana, Tony Gumare Marbe, Tony Lamabaje, then it's Sela Demba, then
Tepala Demba,
Egijabala Suba, Zunchabajana, Chugajin Dubos, Egijabasu, what to Lulu Zune, Kadukatu, Nabatoji Kadu, what Kadukatu Lulu. Tujin Susu, Chaya Bajana Abdua. Ekijabala Susu, Shabajana, Chugajin Duba was Sell them at the Renua.
Did Senla Demba, Tepala Demba?
Sell them.
Okay,
sell them at what them are. Develop them. Develop them. Judy, not the Tachi Gun, then Hardy Gune, Hard Rabatele, and then develop them at the Remudu. And then Canon Orula. Padozo, Sukatugadula, and Yedang Hatan to Gune, Deba Hajin Had Java Ina, Debal never read the law. Hajin Gun and Had Madawaji, Had Java Ina, Sell Deba, what each was in a Sell Deba, and the Tribal never that, and Kuzula Demba, Kuzula Demba Sanjil. Tebashene, and the Kuzu, Sanji Kushia, Tankazuya, Judiji, not to Devanene, what the Kuzuya, what the Sukolo in Samarbe, Kuzula Dembaje, then Chuba Demba Tat, and Suzu, and then Chuba Carpia and Digro, Chuba Carpia, Digre,
in Senla Demba.
Sell Demata, what the Daji Duji Magun and Hard Raja to sell the Baredum.
So now we've gone over the power of eradication. The first power is great contrition for having done non-virtuous actions since beginningless time. We've gone over the power of applying remedies, and we find that there are 6 remedies. Dependence upon profound sutras is the first remedy. So reciting the 35 Buddhas, reciting the 100,000, 20,000, 8,000 verse, or Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, or the Heart Sutra. So we find that recitation and retention of their meaning and just reading them is dependence on profound sutras. Interest in emptiness, meditation upon emptiness. Dependence on recitation is reciting mantras while simultaneously doing the front and self-generation practices and the mantra garlands and so forth. So this is dependence on recitation. Dependence upon images is once you've acquired faith in the Buddha, making images, giving images such as tankas and statues and so forth. Dependence upon worship is making any kind of offering to the Buddha or a stupa. And then dependence upon names is the recitation of the mantras themselves without the actual including the actual practice. We find in the center prayer book, we have many different mantras that are in the prayer book. If you do the front and self-generation with them, then you're doing dependence upon recitation. If you're merely just reciting those name mantras, then you're dependence upon names. The jutsa. Angumala was able to purify his misdeeds, so we should practice accordingly. So please practice this.
Yeah.
Or this must be practiced. This must be practiced. That's more literal. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication. Sheda Sabuldu Rinpoche Tuchena. Near the Dungama, the dead songs. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness, all-powerful Teshvara Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandok, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denrlang.